Love never found, yes, never found, yes, love never found, this one thing I know for Jesus, love never found. Never found me, yes, love never found me, yes, this one thing I know for Jesus, love never found me, yes, never found me, yes.
Mother Teresa, saint or sinner. Before finding fame and becoming an iconic image, Sister Agnes came from a small Albanian village. To rape and pillage were not her tactics, but Mother Teresa's public mask, like Attila the Hun or Julius Caesar, didn't match her behind-the-scenes visage. An arrogant English twit named Muggeridge made a documentary of which she was the subject. He walked in awe beside and behind her like an ant in her larger-than-life presence, a sycophant with nothing but pleasantries to spew, and descriptions flowing only in glowing compliments, claiming the divine light he thought he'd seen, he knew was the miraculous result of her sacred, holy essence. Tawdry media hype combined with medieval superstition spun her into a highly recognizable vision. To the Christ worshippers and gullible, she shone in the dark, bright as a stark full moon, a worldwide symbol of goodness and holiness. Her name soon became wholly eponymous with the poor, sick, and dying of Calcutta, and what's more, synonymous with the flock's idea of saintliness. In her mouth, you couldn't melt butter. But to those who chose not to let the wool be pulled over their eyes and paid closer attention to this angel with feet of clay, it was disturbingly obvious that her public persona, a tiny, selfless woman in sandals and habit, was nothing less than a brilliant invention, a trick of light caused by flickering candles, bought by a fan base eager to grab it. Consider this statement she repeatedly said. Is it fair to think she was not right in the head? The greatest destroyer of peace today is the crying of the innocent unborn child. If a mother can murder her own child in her own womb, what is left for you and for me to kill each other? Does that mean that we are to believe every woman who happens to conceive, regardless of mistake, rape, or incest, should be forced against her will, whether for her own good or ill, to carry her pregnancy to full term and give birth, and then somehow killing will come to an end? Murderers and psychos will suddenly mend? Crimes of passion will go out of fashion? Was she really thinking it would be good for the sick, uneducated, poverty-stricken people on the stinking streets of Calcutta, or anyone in any land or nation, to bring children into that situation, to bear a desperate life of pain and starvation? How out of touch with reality do you have to be to not know the score, or to fail to recognize or choose to ignore that peace's biggest enemy is, without a doubt, war? To preach against contraception, especially to the sick and poor, scrapes the bottom of the barrel of mad ideas. A bad apple wrong and rotten to the core. Campaigning against birth control as she traversed the globe, she asserted that she wanted to give to the ones she deserted what the rich people get with money for the love of God, whatever that's worth. Wait, Isn't it easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle, while getting into heaven for a rich man is tougher? And isn't it odd that at mother's hand the least of father's children would needlessly suffer? Good enough for Jesus, good enough for them too. As though poverty and disease would make them better, less of a fraud, somehow more true, bring them closer to her God, drawn like a bear with a hunger that cannot be sated, wearing a scowl while on the prowl for a big pot of honey, as the lost souls faded away in the foul pit stinking of shit, and the pain and agony she had promoted and venerated, but had never with any of them shared the money. She was the roving ambassador of a highly politicized papacy, the Roman Catholic Church, traveling high class all over the world while leaving the sick and dying in the lurch. She went on a pilgrimage to Knock, the people not in the least bit wary. In Ireland, where her reputation was that of a living saint, the priest welcomed her with open arms, smitten by her imaginary charms, and said without fear, since the Blessed Virgin Mary, she was the biggest thing to appear here. A moth to the flame, she flew into the spotlight of cameras flashing, dashing all over the globe, to be with the ones who could move and shake. From those who would give, she would happily take. President, prime minister, preacher, sinister businessman, wide-eyed spectator, celebrity, royalty, tyrant, dictator. Not concerned about the source of the riches and booty, for grabbing dirty money was her heavenly duty. But what was it for, the fortune she grew? She said to help the poor, though the ones back home lying on the floor hadn't a clue. The dying, living testaments proving her words untrue. In bed with baby Doc and his evil dynastic regime, things were not as they seemed to those that followed, blinded by what they perceived to be kindness, deceived by the illusion of her pure holy highness. They swallowed her act as though matter of fact, and wallowed in their swollen self-righteousness. As she jet-setted abroad, stuffing her pockets, the ones back in India under her care lay on cheap pallets in dazed, dark despair, too weak to do anything other than stare through horrified glazed eyes sunk in deep sockets. There were no chairs, no visitors allowed, no garden or yard, no real medicine to speak of. Maybe an aspirin if you knew a guard to whom you kowtowed. Understanding that you were not being treated, you slipped into despondency, dejected, defeated. In a symbiotic relationship with the scoundrel Robert Maxwell, who was using who was difficult to tell, the hits and misses. But the old Albanian nun got what she bought, which was swell, because it helped both her and Maxwell to sell more empty promises. Back in Calcutta, where her cult of death and suffering soldiered on, the imprisoned, if they were lucky, got to sleep on First World War stretcher beds, looking like Auschwitz victims with shaven heads. If you'd have been in the hospice with Teresa's name, you'd do well to cope after realizing that hope was out of reach. A book on a too high shelf, too weak to figure out a way to kill yourself, to end the pain inside and the agony surrounding you in stereo, wishing you were not here but somewhere freer, just a different scenario, anywhere else. And what if you found out the nun once called Agnes was busy collecting riches from corrupt royalty and crackpots, big-time crooks and despots, of which there were many, in your name and on your behalf? You'd have to laugh and sigh, having a long time ago run out of tears to cry at the unfair game where you never saw a penny. She honored them and left you to return to the sod, claiming the powers that be are ordained of God. so she was happy to eat at their table. She may or may not have comforted some of the afflicted, but to afflict the comfortable she wasn't able. All you saw as you grew more feeble, alongside the rest of the men, women, and children, was the same old dirty needle, used again and again. Many would have been cured with simple antibiotics, but more important to Teresa was being one of the stars, being driven around in big fancy cars, pretending not to be involved in politics. A liar, a cheat, or just a good bluffer. The children who come upon the Lord have to suffer. As time slid by, she grew doubtful, but tougher. Modesty, simplicity, humility. By these three canonical keywords, we are taught the mystery to recognize saints. Yet she considers herself to be mandated by Yahweh, hardly modest at all, wouldn't you say? She lends spiritual solace to wealthy dictators, which is scarcely the essence of simplicity. Dealing with murderers, thieves, and fornicators, she preaches to the poor prostration and surrender. Wouldn't a truly humble person be their defender? At best, she was a misguided, bitter old fool, frightfully, misanthropically, crazily mad. At worst, she was, and let's be real blunt, a snuff porn film fluffer, nasty old cunt that was mentally ill, twisted, and wickedly bad. And if I haven't already said, I am mightily glad she is delightfully dead.
Jesus' blood never failed me yet, never failed me yet. Jesus' blood never failed me yet. This one thing Jesus' blood never failed me yet, never failed me yet. Jesus' blood never failed me yet. Jesus' blood never failed me Jesus' blood never failed me, never failed me. Jesus' blood never failed me yet. There's one thing I know, for He loves me so. Jesus' blood never failed me yet, never failed me yet, never failed me yet. One thing I know, for He loves me so. Jesus' blood never failed